Imagine you buy a stock for $100. It bumps up to 110, and your fingers are just itching to hit sell, right? You want to lock in that gain.
Right. Of
But
course.
then imagine that same $100 stock drops to 70. Instead of cutting your losses, you just freeze.
Yeah, you refuse to sell.
Exactly, stubbornly waiting for it to creep back up. Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a massive stack of behavioral finance research on the desk today, specifically Kahneman and Tversky's original papers on prospect theory.
Huge papers.
Right. So our mission today is unpacking exactly why incredibly smart people, consistently lose money.
Well, the foundational glitch here is really how we process outcomes. Classical economics assumed we calculate value objectively, but we actually weigh gains and losses on completely different neurological scales.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like offer someone a guaranteed $900 or a 90% chance at a grand, and they almost always take the safe 900.
But make it a loss, though.
Yeah.
Like a guaranteed $900 loss versus a 90% chance to lose $1,000, and they suddenly turn into reckless gamblers risking the grand.
Exactly. Biologically, a loss isn't just a math deficit. To our primitive brain, a loss means fewer resources, which, historically meant a threat to survival.
Which is a huge deal.
Right. The pain of losing $100 registers with much more neurological intensity than the dopamine hit of finding $100.
Oh, wow. So it's basically an evolutionary hangover. Is that why, like, a guy at a casino or a day trader on an app goes on a losing streak and just starts throwing huge money at terrible bets
Yes.
just to win it back? Like, they're chasing a psychological point of departure rather than doing actual math.
That's exactly it. The brain just fixates on that original baseline. So dropping from 1,200 to 1,100 stings, while rising from 1,000 to 1,100 feels like a victory.
Even though the final sum is identical.
Precisely. The absolute wealth, the 1,100, is irrelevant. The brain only cares about the trajectory from the anchor.
Which brings us to how external forces completely weaponize this. You walk into a store, you see a price tag of $500 crossed out and a new price of $299.
The classic anchor.
Right. But let me challenge this for a second. If I know the components in a piece of tech cost $400 to manufacture, then buying it for $299 is just objectively a solid mathematical deal. That's not a cognitive trap, that's just me doing good math.
Well, sure, but that assumes you actually know the intrinsic value of the item. Most of the time, you don't.
Fair point.
The brain absolutely hates uncertainty, so it just grabs the very first number it sees, the 500, and uses it as a baseline to reduce cognitive load. You aren't calculating the value of microchips.
You're just measuring the distance between $500 and $299.
Exactly.
So the relief of avoiding a $200 loss basically overrides evaluating the actual product.
Yes, and that is the core mechanism of framing. A store can say 30% discount, which is just presenting a sterile price, or they can say, don't waste 30% of your profit.
Oh, yeah. One is just a fact, but the other triggers that primitive survival threat we just talked about.
Add scarcity to that frame, and the cognitive trap just snaps shut. Think of an app flashing, only 2 seats left, or a ticking countdown timer on a checkout page.
It's engineered panic.
It literally shifts blood flow in your brain. Artificial urgency triggers a mild fight or flight response. Your executive function, the part that weighs long-term utility, gets entirely bypassed.
Oh, wow.
The brain reprioritizes to neutralize the immediate threat, which in this manufactured environment is just missing out.
So the standard advice of, well, just ask yourself if you need it, is basically useless if your executive function is completely offline.
It really is. A real defense requires structural friction, not just willpower. Before buying, you have to decouple the actual utility of the item from the dopamine hit of the transaction.
So what, like a cooling off period?
Exactly. Force a 24-hour break. Let the cortisol drop so your rational brain can reboot and assess the intrinsic value, free from the anchor.
So humans aren't broken or irrational. We just operate on predictable, evolutionary shortcuts that no longer map perfectly to modern financial environments.
Right. We are optimized for avoiding immediate pain, not compounding long-term interest.
Which leaves a pretty massive question hanging in the air for you. If our predictable errors can be mapped this well, can our environments be secretly designed to control our decisions?
Especially when AI-driven algorithms start mapping our personal browsing habits to trigger these exact vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Something for you to mull over. Until our next deep dive, where we'll explore choice architecture and the power of the nudge, stay curious.